Near midnight, Elena March was locking her workshop beneath the abandoned Belgrave station. Black cars rolled onto the platform above her. Their engines sent a tremor through 20 years of rusted stone and iron. Every pendulum on her walls slipped out of rhythm at once. Just once. Elena lifted her head. She had not seen the cars. She did not need to. She had spent her whole life learning to hear a room the way other people learn to look at one. She knew, before the footsteps reached the stairwell, that something outside her world had just stepped into it. Lucian Vero came down the stairs. Black coat, still dark with rain. He was carrying a wooden box marked with a silver serpent, the crest of a family that ran more of the city's underworld than anyone said aloud. He set the box on her workbench, no ceremony. Inside, on torn velvet, sat a pocket watch, shattered crystal, chain crusted with dried blood, hands frozen at 1:17. He did not threaten her. He did not need to. The watch did that for him. At sunrise 3 days from now, he said, the council will seal my brother's death as official. If this watch holds anything, this is the only window to find it. Elena lifted the watch and listened before she looked. That was how her father had taught her, decades ago, back when she was small enough to sit on his workbench stool. It wasn't magic, it was attention. Total. Unbroken. Within seconds, she knew the rhythm ticking under the cracked crystal did not belong to the original mechanism. No one has opened this watch since Cassian died, Lucian said, watching her face. Elena met his eyes. She had long since stopped being impressed by dangerous men. Someone opened it, she said, and they wanted you to believe they didn't. She worked the case open with tools thinner than needles, a gear newer than every other component, a ring of dark wax around a hidden axle, a hollow chamber that didn't belong in any Vero design she had ever studied. A spring jammed near the hour wheel, deliberately, not by accident. She turned the crown backward. A faint static crackled under her fingers. Buried inside the noise, a single broken syllable. She asked for silence. She turned the hands to another hour. A man's voice rose out of the mechanism, fractured, thin. Lou. Lucian went rigid. He knew that voice. There is a voice trapped inside this watch, Elena said. She let the words sit the way you let a verdict sit before anyone dares respond to it. Lucian asked her to recover the full testimony. Elena told him what she would need: the coroner's report, the medical room's temperature logs, the regulator clock that recorded the room's temperature the night his brother died, access to the council clock, maintenance records for every timepiece in the estate. Lucian asked why a watchmaker needed forensic files. I'm not here to determine how your brother died, Elena said. I'm here to determine which clock lied first. He agreed. She warned him plainly. She answered to evidence, not to orders. Threats are loud, she said. Lies are quieter. I'm better at hearing those. Less than an hour later, Lucian brought her to the Vero estate. The council's contempt for her arrived before she crossed the threshold. Marcus Vane, silver-templed, immaculate, looked over her plain working dress, the way it sat honestly against her full figure. Her scuffed boots, still faintly stained with oil. He drew his conclusions instantly, the way men like Marcus always did, mistaking a woman's comfort in her own skin for a lack of seriousness. One council member called her dismissively, the shop girl. Lucian did not defend her looks. He did not play the gallant rescuer of her dignity. He said to the whole room, she is here because none of you heard what was inside that watch. A dresser by her profession. He moved on before anyone could argue. Elena did not thank him. Her attention had already caught on the watch at Marcus's wrist. Something in the metal band looked wrong to her. Too fine a wear pattern for a man who claimed never to touch the mechanism himself. She said nothing. She filed it away. She would need more than a glance before she pointed a finger in a room like this one. Marcus noticed her looking. He smiled faintly and gestured toward another council member, a thin man named Holloway who kept the estate's ledgers. If you're hunting for someone careless with the family's clocks, Marcus said, start with the man who signs for their maintenance. Elena logged that too. A man who volunteers a suspect before anyone accuses him is worth watching twice. She examined the council clock next. The great mechanism enthroned behind the seat of power itself, its hands frozen at the same impossible hour, 1:17. The escapement wasn't broken. The mainspring still held tension. Someone had physically thrown the locking lever down by hand. Then she turned to the medical regulator clock, the instrument that recorded the temperature of the room where Cassian's body was found. It ran 43 minutes behind the council clock, not from damage, from a synchronizing gear that had been removed, rotated, and quietly reinstalled. Elena drew no conclusions about the time of death herself. "Your doctor calculated the body against the wrong room," she said, "and the wrong clock." She led Lucian to the man who could finish the sentence she refused to finish for him. Dr. Adrian Kell cross-referenced the true room temperature, the state of the blood, the physical notes taken at intake, the hour Cassian had actually been brought into the medical room. He confirmed, quietly, an honest time of death closer to 12:34, not 1:17. At 12:34, Lucian had been standing in a public negotiation, dozens of witnesses. The false hour of 1:17 erased that alibi entirely. "Who benefits," Elena asked, "from making you look innocent enough to lead, but guilty enough to control?" Lucian understood in that moment that the council had never intended to accuse him outright. They had kept a noose stitched from a false hour, ready to tighten whenever obedience faltered. Lucian brought Elena back to her workshop. That same night, the power failed across the old station grounds. Men came through the dark, weapons drawn. They ignored the cash box. They ignored the files stacked along the walls. They ignored Elena herself in the first frantic seconds. They moved with the purpose of men who had been told exactly what to retrieve. Cassian's watch. Elena understood instantly. Whoever sent them already knew where the evidence lived. She pulled Lucian through the maintenance tunnels beneath the old platform. A bullet meant for her tore instead through his shoulder as he turned his body between her and the gunfire. They made it into the vault, sealed the steel door behind them. Gunfire faded into muffled thuds against metal built to survive far worse. Inside, surrounded by hundreds of timepieces that could unmake entire families, Lucian asked why she had never sold any of it. Elena told him the truth. The evidence didn't belong to whoever held it. It belonged to whatever it could still prove. His eyes found a watch bearing her father's name among the shelves. Elena told him the short version of a story she rarely told anyone. Her father had been forced once to alter the recorded time on a piece of evidence, to manufacture an alibi for a murderer. When the work was finished, they killed him anyway. Buried his memory under the accusation that he had forged evidence for money. Elena did not keep the workshop to mourn him. She kept it so no watchmaker could ever again be turned into a tool for erasing the truth. "Protection means nothing," she said, tying off the last bandage, "if the lie survives." When the footsteps of the retreating gunmen finally faded from the corridor, she added quieter, "Because someone killed your brother to change the future. I won't let them rewrite the past too." Lucian, bleeding and cornered in a vault full of secrets that could have made her wealthy 100 times over, asked her, quietly, why she had never simply disappeared with all of it, built herself a different life, far from Mafia families and dead fathers and rooms full of men who underestimated her on sight. Elena considered the question before answering. "The evidence isn't mine to spend," she said. "It's only mine to keep honest." There was no kiss. There was only the way she let him hold still against her hands without flinching while she worked. The way he watched her thread the bandage with the same unhurried precision she gave a broken gear. A quiet, unfamiliar sensation settling into his chest, despite the gunfire still audible beyond the vault door. Being looked after by someone who wanted nothing from him in return. Elena found her Aunt Nora's old notes describing the mechanism Cassian had built into the watch. An echo wheel. She reduced its workings to 3 truths for Lucian. It stored short bursts of sound along mechanical grooves, acting as keys for a hidden recorded cylinder beneath the axle. Each burst released only when the hands crossed its precise hour in the right direction. The council clock held a resonance chamber large enough to amplify every fragment during the succession ritual known as first hour. Cassian had not hidden one recording, she told him. He had hidden a sentence inside every hour. The first fragment she recovered chilled the room. If Lucian hears this, the council has already chosen him. A later fragment carried a single word, badly damaged. Adrian. Lucian, furious and frightened in equal measure, had the doctor seized before Elena could stop him. She should have asked for time to clean the fragment first. She hadn't. The deadline was pressing, and she let the pressure decide for her. In the interrogation room, Adrian's own wristwatch ran exactly 7 minutes slow, a discrepancy he had clearly never bothered to correct. Elena asked him why. He said nothing. She cross-referenced those 7 minutes against the medical wing's entry logs. The council had moved Adrian's daughter to a hidden location exactly 7 minutes before he signed the falsified death report. Adrian finally confessed. Marcus had given him precisely 7 minutes to choose between his signature and his daughter's life. He had kept the watch's error running ever since. A private, silent punishment for the moment he surrendered. It did not prove his innocence. It gave him the opening to tell a story that could be verified against real logs and a real abduction file. Cassian, he admitted, had still been alive when brought into the medical room. He had held the watch tightly, refused to let it be surrendered to the council. Adrian had quietly placed it back into Lucian's hands at the funeral himself. He confessed to falsifying the report. He denied, with everything he had left, any part in planning Cassian's death. Later, once the fragment had been properly cleaned and replayed, the full sentence emerged. "Adrian knows what they did to my body. Ask him gently." Elena stood very still when she heard it. "I let the clock run out on him before I understood what it was actually saying," she admitted to Lucian. "I heard a name and decided it was an accusation. It wasn't. Lucian didn't absolve her of it. He only said, 'Then we listen to all of it next time, every syllable, before either of us decides anything.'" The trail of rare oil eventually led back to Marcus, but it took longer than a glance at his wrist. Elena tested a sample scraped from the tampered gear inside Cassian's watch. It carried a fine trace of metal dust, the same alloy used only in the council clock's internal casing. Only 3 people in the estate had ever been granted access to that casing. Marcus was one of them. Holloway, the ledger keeper Marcus had pointed her toward, was another. The third had died years earlier. When confronted, Marcus admitted, almost casually, that he had opened the watch. He framed it as an act of preservation, not concealment. He did not deny enough to satisfy anyone in the room. He pivoted instead to the fear he knew lived closest to Lucian's surface. He told Lucian that Cassian had intended to remove him from the succession entirely, that his brother had never believed a man who only knew violence could hold a family together. "Your brother's last words won't make you king," Marcus said. "They'll prove you were never meant to be one," he added, almost gently, quoting a fragment Elena had recovered days earlier and not yet fully cleaned. Lucian must never take the chair. Lucian believed for one long night that Marcus was right, that his own brother had never trusted him. Elena told him to wait. The fragment was incomplete. He didn't wait. Struck exactly where Marcus intended. Years of being summoned, only when blood needed spilling, roared back through him at once. He lifted the shattered watch as though he might hurl it against the wall. Elena did not beg. She stood in front of him and said, "If you destroy it now, you're not proving him wrong. You're proving the council chose the right man to control." Lucian stopped. The turning point. He set the watch down instead of shattering it, refusing, for the first time in his life, to become exactly what Marcus had predicted. Later, alone with her, he apologized for the moment he nearly ended it, for nearly destroying the one thing that might tell him the truth about his own brother. Elena told him plainly that she had believed in that instant he would choose the violence everyone expected of him. Lucian asked if his stopping had changed her mind. "It changed 1 minute of it," she said. "The rest, you still have to earn." In the calm after, Elena discovered that Lucian's grip, in that near-violent moment, had shifted the final spring inside the mechanism just slightly. The last recorded sentence sat locked behind a release spring, jammed since the crystal first cracked. A careless blow would destroy the entire echo wheel. There was no safe way to force it open. Only a controlled one, and even that carried real risk. "The last sentence is still there," she told him. "But whoever frees it may lose it in the freeing." Lucian wanted Marcus arrested immediately. Elena stopped him. An incomplete recording could too easily be dismissed as fabrication. The truth needed its whole chain. The hand-stopped council clock, the 43-minute discrepancy in the regulator, Adrian's testimony, the abduction logs, the matching alloy, the maintenance records, decades of quietly altered evidence, and Cassian's own recorded voice, standing with all of it, not instead of it. Elena proposed using the succession ritual itself. First hour, the ceremony in which a new boss's legitimacy required placing his predecessor's watch into the council clock's central mechanism, the two synchronizing for 1 hour while the resonance chamber carried every hidden fragment to the entire council at once. Marcus could not cancel the ritual without publicly admitting the evidence frightened him. First hour was law. The council had already declared Lucian's succession. Only the successor could touch the central lock. Lucian saw an opening of his own. He let word reach Marcus through a guard he suspected of leaking that Elena hadn't finished restoring the wheel in time. that the workshop's protection would be thinned the following night as a result. Security pulled back to cover the estate instead. Marcus believed it. He moved his men that same night, confident the field was clear. Lucian's own people were waiting in the tunnels, and the guard who had carried the false word to Marcus was quietly identified as the council's inside source before morning. Elena built a small brace to steady Cassian's watch during the ritual. It could not guarantee the final spring would release safely, only that if force ever came to the watch, someone would have to choose, in that instant, whether to save the mechanism or the truth inside it. She did not yet know which choice the night would ask of her. Before first hour could begin, Marcus had Elena seized and held in an old mechanical room beneath the estate. He offered her a bargain, declare the watch naturally broken. In exchange, he would hand over the file on her father's death. Elena understood in that moment exactly who had orchestrated the pressure that forced her father to falsify evidence years earlier. Marcus insisted he had never ordered her father killed out of malice. He had simply removed someone capable of making the official record worthless. Truth does not decide who rules, he told her. The record does. Elena pretended to agree. Marcus opened a safe, but only for her father's file and an old ledger of payments. He kept the rest locked elsewhere, careful even now, and told her so, almost proudly, as if his caution were proof of how thoroughly he had covered every trace. While he spoke, Elena listened. The rotations, the tension of the spring, the distinct clicks of each tumbler. She memorized the combination purely by sound, the way her father had trained her to memorize anything mechanical. Marcus, satisfied, took her father's file and the ledger with him. When he left, certain there was nothing more in that room worth guarding. He was careless in a different way. He never thought to search the lining of her boot, where a second, thinner spring had waited since before she was ever brought to the estate. Hidden there the night Lucian first carried the watch into her workshop, when she had first understood how far this might go. She freed it, picked the lock at her wrists, and let herself out. The ledger and her father's file were gone with Marcus. But the safe's true combination, memorized and unused that night, would matter again before morning, once Lucian's own people finished tracing the deployment order for Cassian's death through the estate's security logs, and once Nora's old vault records, kept separately for 20 years exactly so no single room could hold everything, surfaced the list of altered evidence Marcus had built his power on. No single container held the whole truth. It had never been safe to keep it that way. Marcus returned to the council chamber and announced that Elena had fled with stolen evidence. He called her a spy for a rival family. The council demanded Lucian begin first hour without Cassian's watch. To prove his loyalty, he would sign an execution order for Elena the moment she was found. Refusal would mean his removal. Lucian stepped toward the succession dais. He looked at the seat that had never truly been meant for him. He remembered his brother's voice, stopping him from executing a traitor years earlier. The most dangerous boss isn't the man who knows how to kill. It's the man who knows when not to. He did not sit. He tore the execution order in half instead. Any throne that requires me to kill the only person searching for the truth is not a throne, he said. It's a cage. He ordered every loyal man left to him to seal the estate. The first chime of first hour had barely sounded when the chamber doors opened. Elena walked in, oil-stained, bruised at the wrists, carrying Cassian's watch, the brace, and the deployment order Lucian's men had recovered separately from the estate's own security archive. Marcus ordered her seized. Lucian stepped down from the dais. He placed himself between her and the entire council. "Touch her," he said, "and this council ends before the next second passes." Elena did not shelter behind him. She walked forward and stood beside him instead. The council members who had called her a shop girl weeks earlier now watched her with the wary stillness of men recalculating everything they thought they understood about power in that room. She did not raise her voice. She had learned long ago that the truth rarely needed volume, only order. She laid out the chain of evidence, piece by piece, source by source. The council clock stopped by hand at 1:17. The medical regulator deliberately skewed 43 minutes. Adrian's confirmation of a true death near 12:34. The logs proving his daughter's abduction had forced his false signature. The alloy linking the tampered gear to the council clock's own casing, and the short list of hands ever granted access to it. Nora's 20 years of vault records, documenting the pattern of altered evidence long before Cassian's death. The deployment order, recovered from the security archive, naming the room, the hour, and the men chosen for Cassian's murder. Marcus had never pulled the trigger himself. He had simply arranged everything the trigger required. Elena placed the watch into the council clock's waiting mechanism. Lucian, using the succession candidate's authority, locked the ritual into motion. The two clocks began to synchronize. Cassian's voice rose through the resonance chamber, fractured, unmistakable. He described how the council had sold control of the family's shipping routes, how Marcus had organized his death, how the council wanted Lucian as boss precisely because he was strong, feared, and easily provoked, how the false hour of death had been engineered as a leash, ready to tighten whenever obedience wavered. Marcus shouted that the recording was Elena's forgery. She answered by matching each fragment against evidence already laid bare before the room. The testimony did not stand alone. It completed a chain no one could dismiss. Understanding he had lost the room, Marcus lunged for the watch himself, tearing at the brace with his bare hands, trying to crush the mechanism before the last fragment could reach anyone. Lucian caught his wrist. For 1 second, the choice was Lucian's alone. Hold the watch intact, the last piece of his brother preserved forever and silent, or let it break and let his brother finish speaking. He looked at Elena. She said nothing. It had to be his choice. Lucian forced Marcus's grip down onto the casing instead of away from it, driving the pressure directly into the jammed release spring, sacrificing the housing on purpose rather than by accident. The final spring gave way. Cassian's last words rang through the chamber. "Lucian, if they put you in my chair, don't become the weapon they think you are. Become the man they were afraid I trusted. I let them turn you into my weapon because it made my rule easier. That was my failure, not yours. Don't take a chair they built for a man they wanted to control. Build a different one if you have to build it alone." The room that had once believed Cassian intended to strip Lucian of everything now understood the opposite. He had trusted him completely. He had simply never said so while he was alive to be believed. Marcus, disarmed and surrounded, mocked Lucian for hesitating. Certain the council would call him weak if he didn't finish it. "Do it," he said, almost gently. The way a teacher coaxes a reluctant student toward an answer he already believes is correct. Prove them right about you. It's the only thing you've ever been good at. For one long moment, the old instinct rose in Lucian exactly the way Marcus intended. The years of being summoned only for blood. The years of believing his worth began and ended with what damage he could do. His finger found the trigger guard. The room held its breath. Lucian looked at his brother's ruined watch. He remembered words spoken to him years before he understood their weight. He lowered the gun. "My brother died," he said, "because you believed time belonged to you. From this moment, not 1 second of your life does." He would not give Marcus a private ending. He ordered him held for the full council of allied families, every house Marcus had ever falsified a record against, to hear the same proof chain that had just been laid before this room. Marcus would not die quietly, and he would not die a martyr. He would stand, publicly, stripped of the one thing he had always trusted more than truth. The record, finally telling the truth about him. In the days that followed, Lucian ordered every official record corrected. Cassian's time of death changed from 117 to 1234. The memorial inscription rewritten to match. He placed his brother's shattered watch beneath his portrait himself. "You were not replaced," he said quietly. "You were avenged." He dissolved the old council entirely, publishing every falsified record they had ever produced. He proposed a new, independent role, keeper of hours. Confirmation would be required before any evidence involving succession, high-ranking deaths, treaties, or transfers of power could ever again become official record. He did not simply hand Elena the title. He brought the proposal before every allied family and let them set its terms alongside her. Elena insisted on one condition before she accepted. No boss, including Lucian himself, could overturn a keeper's finding by decree. Only another independent keeper's review could. The family signed it into law before she agreed to hold the position. "My brother left me a throne," Lucian told her. "You gave me the truth required to deserve it." He also made public the file proving her father had been coerced into falsifying evidence decades earlier. Struck his name from every record of betrayal. Had the Vero family formally acknowledged its role in burying the truth. Elena had never wanted vengeance carried out on her behalf. She had only ever wanted the final record to finally say what was true. A victory that struck directly at the belief Marcus had spent his life defending. that the record outweighed the truth. She made sure at last the record served it instead. Weeks later, Lucian returned to her workshop alone, the station still under slow repair around them. No guards trailing him, no weapon on the table between them, no dead man lying anywhere nearby. Elena noticed before he said a word that he had come without the armor of his title, dressed the way an ordinary man might dress on an ordinary evening. Something in that small, deliberate choice told her more than anything he could have said aloud. He brought his own personal watch. Elena checked it, told him it worked perfectly. "I know," he said. She asked why he'd bothered bringing it at all. "Because it was the only excuse I had to see you," he admitted. Elena smiled but did not fall immediately into his arms. He asked if she would have dinner with him. Not at the estate, no council watching, no business waiting to interrupt them. She told him her time was very expensive now. He placed the watch gently into her open palm. "Then start with this hour," he said. He leaned toward her. He stopped short of closing the last distance himself, left that choice entirely to her. Elena held the watch in one hand, caught the collar of his coat in the other, pulled him down to meet her. A kiss that belonged to both of them equally. Chosen, not claimed. Afterward, once power had been restored to the old station grounds, Elena climbed the platform to repair the great station clock. It had stood frozen for 20 years, silent since the year her father died. On the first morning after formally becoming keeper of hours, she fitted the final gear into place. The minute hand shuddered forward into its first true movement in 2 decades. No sudden light, no dramatic reveal, nothing supernatural at all. Only an old broken clock beginning to run again because a woman had finally fixed it with her own 2 hands. The ticking rolled out across the empty station, steady, unhurried. Lucian stood a step behind her, close enough to feel the moment, careful not to touch her, letting her have it fully as her own. Elena watched the hands move forward. She understood, for the first time in her adult life, that she was no longer spending her days only guarding the past. She was finally building a future no one would ever again be permitted to rewrite.